endoscopic modified medial maxilectomy or extended medial maxilectomy. The procedure begins with outfracturing or infracturing the inferior turbinate. A curved artery clip is then placed just posterior to the head of the inferior turbinate. The tips of the artery clip are directed towards the natural os. This will provide hemostasis for the incision that will take place. Once the clip has been removed, you can see that the vessels of the inferior turbinate have been compressed. An endoscopic or iris scissor is then used to resect the middle 2/3 of the inferior turbinate. Preserving the head is important for humidification, and posteriorly it's best to avoid the stump to minimize the chance of a significant bleed from the inferior turbinate artery or vein. Once the inferior turbinate midsection has been removed, a 30-degree scope will be used to visualize the lateral nasal wall and floor. A straight curette is used to make a posterior incision just anterior to the junction of the hard and soft palate. This incision is curved up onto the medial wall and down onto the floor. The anterior aspect of this incision is level with the maxillary ostium. This incision again is curved. Caution must be exerted not to make the flap too narrow, otherwise it will tear. The incision is completed superiorly using a blade. A freer can then be used to carefully raise this flap, which is based infromedially off the lateral nasal wall. As you can see, the bone is very thin in this region, and so caution must be exerted not to enter the sinus at this stage. This flap will be used at the end of the procedure. At the level of the natural os, the freer elevator is inserted directly into the sinus. The incision is then completed with a turbinectomy scissor or an iris scissor. The medial maxillary wall can then be infractured using the dissector, and the bone and the mucosa can be removed. We can already begin to visualize the maxillary sinus Following removal of the medial maxillary wall, a backbiter can be used to extend the antrostomy anteriorly. Caution must be exerted posteriorly so as not to injure the descending palatine nerve and cause palatal numbness. Using an adult backbiter preferably, the maxillary wall can be resected anteriorly beneath the insertion of the inferior turbinate into the lateral nasal wall. Hasner's valve is located at the axilla of the inferior turbinate and so is not damaged by keeping low and anterior. Here you can see that with a 0-degree scope we can begin to visualize the the anterolateral wall of the sinus, and with a 30-degree scope we can visualize the entire sinus. The floor flap can then be draped over the exposed bone, and this will minimize crusting. Using a 30-degree scope, we can demonstrate the exit of Hasner's valve at the level of the inferior turbinate. Here we can see Hasner's valve exiting, and we can see that it is well out of harm's way with this approach.